Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the stillness of the dawn, a dormant treasure stirred within the depths of the wardrobe, veiled by its mundane cohorts. A slender beam of sunlight pierced the dimness, like a guiding ray. With tentative purpose, a hand ventured, caressing the silk like a buried treasure, its surface smooth as a whispered secret. Cade's breath, held captive, escaped in a subdued sigh as his touch traced the satin's delicate weave. Weeks had elapsed since its arrival, a secret solace confined to moments of solitude. Today, the boundaries of this seclusion would be breached. A quiet revolution had been brewing in his mind, a pilgrimage to a distant mall, an anonymous sanctuary where he could merge with the unseen masses, his chosen garment dancing with the wind. Just an hour or two of freedom. He pulled the skirt from its hanger, the material catching the light as it moved. Next came the white blouse he'd purchased from a thrift store, tags still attached, and the auburn wig he'd splurged on after months of saving. The wig had cost more than he'd intended to spend, but the moment he'd seen that rich, natural-looking auburn color, he knew it was perfect. In the bathroom, Cade carefully applied foundation, concealing the shadow of stubble he'd shaved twice that morning. His hands trembled slightly as he lined his eyes, but steadied as he continued his routine. The face in the mirror gradually transformed, softening, opening up possibilities he normally kept locked away. When the auburn wig was in place, styled with gentle waves that framed his face, Cade stepped back to take in his full appearance. The emerald skirt flowed beautifully from his waist, the fabric catching light in mesmerizing ways. The white blouse was fitted enough to suggest a feminine silhouette without revealing the truth beneath.
"This is just for today,"
he whispered to his reflection. "Just a few hours." But even as he spoke the words, something inside him wondered if that was true. The drive to Westfield Mall took 40 minutes, each mile putting distance between Cade and anyone who might recognize him. He parked in the far corner of the lot, heart pounding as he checked his appearance one final time in the rearview mirror. The auburn hair looked natural, the makeup tasteful. He could pass. He could have this. Walking across the parking lot proved the first real test, the feeling of being seen, of existing in the world as someone other than the person everyone knew. The emerald skirt moved with each step, a constant reminder of his vulnerability and his courage. He'd practiced walking in his apartment, but doing it now, in public, felt entirely different. Inside the mall, cool air conditioning and the background hum of conversations washed over him. No one stared. No one pointed. He was just another shopper on a Saturday afternoon. For the first hour, Cade simply wandered, acclimating to this new experience of moving through the world. He browsed through stores he'd never have entered before, touching soft fabrics, holding delicate jewelry to the light. In a makeup store, a saleswoman approached. "Can I help you find anything today, ma'am?" "Ma'am?" The word landed like a revelation. "I'm just looking, thank you," Cade replied softly, conscious of keeping his voice in a higher register. The saleswoman nodded and moved away, leaving Cade with the warm glow of being addressed as the person he felt like inside. "Ma'am." It fit like the emerald skirt fit. Not perfectly, perhaps, but right somehow. By the second hour, confidence had bloomed. Cade purchased a coffee from the food court and sat watching people pass by. The moment felt ordinary and extraordinary simultaneously. He belonged here, in this body, in these clothes, with this auburn hair framing his face. The decision to take the escalator to the upper level came without much thought. There was a bookstore up there he wanted to visit, maybe purchase something to commemorate this day. His emerald skirt swished pleasantly as he approached the moving stairs. Stepping onto the escalator, Cade felt a small tug at the back of his skirt. He ignored it at first, assuming it had merely caught on something momentarily. The sensation persisted, growing stronger. When he tried to turn to investigate, the fabric pulled tighter. Something was wrong. The edge of the emerald satin had become caught in the teeth of the escalator step. As the steps flattened at the top of the ride, the skirt was being pulled inexorably downward. Panic flared as Cade realized what was happening. He yanked at the material, trying to free it, but the machine was too powerful. The beautiful fabric stretched taut between the disappearing step and his waist. Other shoppers began to notice, some stopping to watch with concern, others hurrying past to avoid involvement. Then came the sound, a horrible ripping noise as the delicate satin tore. Simultaneously, a metallic grinding filled the air, and the escalator shuddered to a stop. An alarm began to blare. Heat rushed to Cade's face. People were staring now. The emerald skirt, his armor, and his joy was ruined, with a large section torn away and still disappearing into the mechanism. He was trapped, exposed, the illusion shattered. "Don't move, ma'am! Stay right there!" A mall employee in a navy uniform was rushing toward the escalator. Cade wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor. Instead, he stood frozen, one hand clutching what remained of his skirt, the other pressed against his mouth. The employee reached him quickly, assessing the situation with professional efficiency.
"Are you hurt anywhere?"
The worker asked, a man perhaps in his 40s with kind eyes and a name tag that read, Manuel. Cade shook his head, not trusting his voice.
"Okay, good. We've got the emergency stop activated. My colleague is calling maintenance now. They'll get you free in no time."
Manuel positioned himself between Cade and the curious onlookers below, creating a small barrier of privacy.
"These things happen more often than you'd think,"
he said, conversationally, as though discussing the weather.
"Last month, a lady got her purse strap caught. Month before that, some teenager's shoelaces."
His casual tone was clearly intended to ease Cade's embarrassment, and somehow it worked. Breathing became slightly easier.
"I'm so sorry about your skirt,"
Manuel continued.
"Beautiful color. Emerald suits you with that auburn hair."
Cade managed a whispered, "Thank you," the words barely audible over the continuing alarm. A second employee arrived with tools, and together they worked to free the trapped fabric without causing further damage to either the skirt or the escalator. Throughout the process, Manuel maintained a stream of ordinary conversation, never once betraying any indication that he saw Cade as anything other than a woman in an unfortunate situation. "There we go, ma'am. You're free now," Manuel said finally, stepping back. "I'll need to get some information for our incident report, if you don't mind. And the mall will compensate you for the damaged clothing, of course." Cade stood on shaky legs, the torn emerald skirt now revealing part of the slip he wore underneath.
"I appreciate your help, but I'd rather not file a report."
Manuel seemed to understand the unspoken concerns. He lowered his voice.
"Tell you what, we still need to document what happened, but we can keep it minimal. Would it be all right if I just got your first name for our records?"
A pause. The name Cade hovered on his lips, but something else emerged instead.
"Lorelei,"
he said softly.
"My name is Lorelei."
The name had come from nowhere and everywhere at once. A character in a book he'd loved as a child. A name he'd sometimes whispered to himself in private moments.
Beautiful name,
Manuel said, writing it down.
Well, Lorelei, is there anything else we can do for you today? We have some gift shops that sell wraps and scarves, if you'd like something to, cover the tear until you get home. The kindness was overwhelming. Here, in what should have been his moment of greatest humiliation, Lorelei, was being treated with dignity and respect. More than that, she was being seen as who she truly was. A scarf would be wonderful, thank you. Manuel escorted her to a nearby shop, explained the situation to the clerk, and soon Lorelei had a patterned silk scarf that coordinated surprisingly well with what remained of her emerald skirt. The mall provided it free of charge, along with a gift card for a future visit. You take care now, Lorelei,
Manuel said, as he prepared to return to his duties.
And please don't be embarrassed. You handled this with real grace.
As Manuel walked away, Lorelei stood in the center of the mall, surrounded by the ordinary Saturday crowd. The incident had drawn attention, yes, but now people were moving on, returning to their own lives. And in the wake of that momentary crisis, something had crystallized within her. Ma'am, Lorelei. The sound of those words, the feeling they created, recognition, belonging, truth. She didn't want to go back. Not to the parking lot where Cade's car waited. Not to the apartment where Cade's clothes hung in the closet. Not to the life where she existed only in hidden moments. That day, Lorelei left the mall not in defeat, but in determination. The torn emerald skirt would later be carefully folded and placed in a memory box, not as a reminder of humiliation, but as the catalyst for her rebirth. The weeks that followed were not easy. Telling friends, family, co-workers that the person they had known was not who they thought. Some accepted Lorelei immediately, some needed time, some walked away entirely. She learned which losses to mourn and which to recognize as necessary departures. Her auburn hair became her signature, no longer a wig, but her own hair, grown out and colored to match that first transformative day. She kept it in the same style, a constant reminder of the moment when everything changed, when an escalator malfunction somehow set her free. 3 months after the incident, Lorelei returned to Westfield Mall, this time in a blue dress with a modest hemline and sensible shoes. She went directly to the information desk and asked for Manuel. "He's on lunch break," the attendant informed her. "Should be back in 20 minutes. Can someone else help you?" "I'll wait," Lorelei decided, settling onto a nearby bench. When Manuel appeared, he didn't recognize her at first. Why would he? She was just one of countless people he'd assisted over the months. But when she approached and introduced herself, recognition dawned in his eyes. "Lorelei, the escalator incident. How are you doing? That's a much better outcome than most of our emergency situations." She smiled. "I wanted to thank you properly, the way you treated me that day, with such respect and kindness. It mattered more than you could know." Manuel waved off the gratitude.
"Just doing my job, ma'am."
"No," Lorelei insisted. "It was more than that. You helped me realize something important about myself. That day changed my life." Understanding seemed to pass over Manuel's features. He smiled warmly. "Well, I'm glad something good came out of a wardrobe malfunction. You seem happy." "I am," Lorelei confirmed. "For the first time, I really am." She handed him an envelope containing a thank you card and a gift certificate to a local restaurant. Just a small token of appreciation. Manuel accepted it with grace. You know, in 15 years working mall security, this might be the first time someone came back to say thanks. Usually people want to forget their embarrassing moments here. I don't want to forget, Lorelei said. That moment taught me who I am. After their brief conversation, Lorelei walked through the mall, past the now repaired escalator where her journey had truly begun. She touched the handrail lightly as she passed, a silent acknowledgement of how unexpected moments can change everything. 6 months into her new life, Lorelei started hormone therapy. The physical changes came gradually, softening features, subtle shifts in fat distribution, a gentleness to her skin. Each change felt like a homecoming, her body slowly aligning with the person she had always been inside. She kept a journal, documenting the journey. On the anniversary of the escalator incident, she wrote, 1 year ago today, an emerald green satin skirt changed my life. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd worn something else, chosen a different mall, taken the stairs instead of the escalator. But then I remember that truth finds its way out eventually. The escalator didn't create Lorelei. It simply introduced her to the world a little sooner than planned. And for that, I'll always be grateful. The second year brought new milestones. Lorelei found community, built friendships with other women who shared similar journeys. She dated, discovering both the joys and complications of romantic connection as her authentic self. Some men disappeared when they learned her history. Others fetishized it, but a few saw her simply as Lorelei, complete and worthy of love. She advanced in her career as a graphic designer, her creative work flourishing with the energy that once went into hiding. Clients remarked on the vibrant, authentic quality of her designs, never knowing how deeply that authenticity had been hard-won. On especially meaningful days, birthdays, anniversaries, moments of celebration, Lorelei would sometimes wear something emerald green. Never another satin skirt, but perhaps a blouse, a scarf, earrings, a private commemoration of the color that had wrapped around her when she first stepped into the world as herself. 3 years after the incident, Lorelei was Christmas shopping at Westfield Mall when she noticed a familiar face. Manuel was still there, now with a few more gray hairs at his temples, helping an elderly woman who had become disoriented near the food court. Lorelei watched from a distance, smiling at his patient kindness. When he finished assisting the woman, Lorelei approached. "Remember me?" she asked. Recognition was immediate this time. "Lorelei! The escalator lady! How could I forget? You look wonderful!" She did look wonderful. Confident, settled into herself, her auburn hair styled in soft waves around her face, wearing a cream-colored sweater and burgundy slacks. "Still saving people at the mall, I see," she said. Manuel laughed. "Someone's got to do it. How have you been? Life treating you well?" "Better than I ever imagined possible," Lorelei admitted. "And I still credit you with giving me that first push in the right direction. Well, technically it was the escalator that did the pushing, but you know what I mean." They chatted briefly about their lives. Manuel's daughter had just started college. Lorelei had recently been promoted. Before parting, Lorelei handed him another envelope, this one containing a Christmas card. "I make a point to thank the people who changed my life," she explained. "It's become something of a tradition." Manuel appeared touched. "Well, I'm honored to be on that list. Take care of yourself, Lorelei. No more escalator incidents, you hear?" "No promises," she laughed. "Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes." As she walked away, Lorelei reflected on how far she had come. From terrified Cade in a hidden emerald skirt to confident Lorelei living openly and authentically. The journey hadn't been linear or simple. There had been setbacks, painful moments, days when she questioned everything. But never once had she considered returning to her former life. That door had closed the moment the escalator teeth had caught her skirt. In her mid-30s, Lorelei made the decision to undergo gender confirmation surgery. The preparation was extensive. Consultations, psychological evaluations, careful financial planning. Through it all, she kept the memory of that day at the mall close, a reminder of how a moment of crisis had revealed her deepest truth. The night before surgery, as she packed her hospital bag, Lorelei opened the memory box where she kept the torn emerald skirt. She touched the fabric gently, running her fingers along the jagged edge where the escalator had claimed a piece of the material and, in exchange, had given her a life. "Thank you," she whispered to the fabric, to the memory, to her past self who had been brave enough to wear it out into the world. Recovery was challenging but affirming. Each day brought her closer to physical alignment with her innermost self. Friends visited with flowers, books, companionship. Her parents, who had struggled initially but ultimately embraced their daughter, brought home-cooked meals and unwavering support. 6 weeks post-surgery, Lorelei returned to the mall. Not for any dramatic reason, not to see Manuel or revisit the escalator, but simply to shop for new clothes for her healing body. As she walked through the familiar space, bags in hand, she passed a mother and young daughter riding the same escalator that had changed her life. The little girl, perhaps 5 years old, wore a princess dress over her regular clothes, twirling on the escalator step as her mother cautioned her to be careful. "But I'm a princess today, Mommy," the child insisted. "Princesses twirl. Princesses also stay safe," the mother replied firmly, taking her daughter's hand. Lorelei smiled at the exchange, at the child's certainty in her identity, at the mother's blend of caution and acceptance. She remembered her own childhood moments of knowing, the times she'd secretly wrapped blankets around herself, like gowns when no one was watching. Passing the pair, Lorelei caught the girl's eye and offered a small wave. The child beamed back, clearly delighted to be noticed in her princess finery. "I like your dress," Lorelei told her. "Thank you," the girl exclaimed. "I'm a princess." "Yes, you are," Lorelei agreed. "The most important thing is always to be who you truly are." The mother gave Lorelei a grateful smile as they reached the top of the escalator and moved on. It was a small moment, insignificant perhaps in the grand scheme of things, but it touched something deep within Lorelei. The recognition that her journey might someday make someone else's path a little easier. By her 40th birthday, Lorelei had established herself not just professionally, but as an advocate, speaking occasionally at events about her experience. She never sought the spotlight, preferring to connect with individuals rather than crowds, but she recognized the power in sharing her story. At one such event, a college symposium on identity and self-determination, Lorelei wore a deep green blouse, not quite emerald, but a deliberate nod to her personal history. Her auburn hair, now with the faintest threads of silver at the temples, was styled in her signature waves. After her talk, a young person approached her, hands fidgeting nervously. "Your story about the escalator, about how a moment of embarrassment became a moment of clarity, it really resonated with me," they said. "I've been struggling with my own identity, and I'm terrified of what happens if I express it." Lorelei nodded in understanding.
"Fear is natural. I was terrified that day, but I've learned that the fear of living authentically is nothing compared to the pain of denying who you are."
Did you ever regret it? The transition? The process had its difficult moments, Lorelei acknowledged. But regret? Never. Not for a single day. The only regret was waiting as long as I did. The conversation continued, Lorelei listening more than speaking, recognizing in this young person the same questions she had once wrestled with. Before they parted, she offered her email address. "For when you need someone who understands," she explained. "We all need that sometimes." Walking to her car after the event, Lorelei reflected on how her life had unfolded. From the terrified person trapped on that escalator to someone who could now offer guidance to others. It was a journey she could never have imagined that Saturday afternoon in the mall. Her phone chimed with a notification, a text from her partner, David, whom she'd met 3 years earlier at a friend's dinner party. A kind, thoughtful man who loved her completely. Her history included, but never the focus of his affection. "How did it go? Dinner's waiting when you get home. Love you." Lorelei smiled, typing a quick reply before starting her car. This, too, was part of the life she'd found. Ordinary, domestic happiness. The quiet joy of being loved for exactly who she was. As she drove, Lorelei thought about the torn emerald skirt still kept in her memory box. Perhaps someday she would have it framed. Not as art, exactly, but as a monument to transformation. A reminder that sometimes our most embarrassing moments can become our most important, that vulnerability can be the doorway to strength. At a red light, she caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. Auburn hair, confident eyes, the face of a woman who had created herself from the deepest truth she knew. Lorelei smiled at her reflection, at the person she had always been, even when hidden. The light turned green, and she drove forward into the evening, into her life. The life that had begun in earnest the day an emerald green satin skirt caught in an escalator and a kind mall employee had called her ma'am. 5 years later, on the 10th anniversary of what she now called her Escalator awakening, Lorelei returned once more to Westfield Mall. The place had changed over the decade. Stores had come and gone, renovations had altered some of the layout, but the main escalator remained, still carrying shoppers between floors in its steady, mechanical rhythm. She wore a simple outfit, jeans, boots, and a green cardigan over a white blouse. Her auburn hair was shorter now, a sophisticated bob that framed her face elegantly. At 45, Lorelei carried herself with the quiet confidence of a woman who had fought for her place in the world and found it. This visit wasn't about shopping. Lorelei had come with a purpose, carrying a small package wrapped in silver paper. She made her way to the mall office and asked if Manuel still worked there. "He retired last year," the receptionist informed her, "after 25 years of service." Disappointment washed over Lorelei. She'd hoped to see him one last time, to share this milestone. "Is there any way to get a message to him?" she asked. "We have a bit of history, and today's a special anniversary. I brought him something." The receptionist hesitated, protective of former employees' privacy. "I can't give out personal information, but I could pass along your name and phone number if you'd like to leave it." Lorelei wrote her details on a notepad, adding a brief message. "The escalator lady says thank you. One more time. Happy 10th anniversary of the day that changed my life." She left the wrapped package, a custom paperweight with an embedded piece of emerald green fabric and the engraved words, "Sometimes getting stuck is how we find our way," along with strict instructions that it was only for Manuel. 3 days later, Lorelai's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Hello, this is Lorelai." "Lorelai, it's Manuel from the mall. Or formerly from the mall, I should say. I got your message and your gift. That was really something special." His voice sounded exactly the same, warm and genuine. Lorelai smiled into the phone. "I wasn't sure you'd remember me after all this time." Manuel chuckled. "Remember the woman who had an epiphany after getting her skirt caught in my escalator? How could I forget? That's not exactly a common workplace occurrence." They talked for nearly an hour, catching up on the decade that had passed. Manuel had retired to spend more time with his grandchildren, taking up woodworking as a hobby. Lorelai told him about her advocacy work, her relationship with David, the life she had built.
"You know,"
Manuel said thoughtfully,
"in all my years at that mall, I dealt with thousands of incidents. Missing children, medical emergencies, theft, you name it. But I've never had anyone tell me that our interaction changed their life. That's a gift I never expected from that job."
"The kindness you showed me that day mattered," Lorelai explained.
"I was at my most vulnerable, most exposed, and you treated me with dignity. You have no idea how rare and valuable that was."
Before ending the call, they made plans to meet for coffee the following week. A proper reunion, a chance to thank him in person once more. That evening, Lorelai sat on her patio, watching the sunset with a glass of wine. David was inside preparing dinner, the comfortable sounds of his cooking a backdrop to her thoughts. She reflected on the winding path that had brought her here, to this moment of contentment. The torn emerald skirt had long since been framed, hanging now in her home office. A conversation piece, a origin story, a reminder of courage. Visitors sometimes asked about it, and Lorelai would tell them the abbreviated version. "It's the outfit that helped me become myself." The full story, with its complex emotions and profound implications, she saved for those closest to her, or for moments when sharing it might help someone else find their way. As the sky deepened from orange to purple, Lorelai thought about identity, how we find it, claim it, live it, how sometimes the most meaningful revelations come not from careful planning, but from unexpected moments when our careful facades fall away. David stepped onto the patio, wiping his hands on a kitchen towel.
"Dinner's almost ready. What are you thinking about so seriously out here?"
Lorelai smiled up at him. "Escalators. Emerald green fabric. The strange ways we become ourselves." He nodded, familiar with her periodic reflections on her journey. "Happy anniversary, by the way. 10 years of Lorelai. The world is better for it." She reached for his hand, squeezing it in silent gratitude. Later that night, as David slept beside her, Lorelai opened her journal and wrote, 10 years ago today, I thought I was having the worst moment of my life. Standing trapped on that escalator, my beautiful skirt torn, exposed in front of strangers. It felt like the end of something. I couldn't have known it was actually the beginning. I've learned that transformation rarely comes when we're ready for it. It arrives in moments of disruption, when our careful plans fall apart, and we're forced to confront what truly matters. The escalator taught me that. The kind man who helped me free myself taught me that. And every day since has been a confirmation of that truth. 10 years as Lorelai, 10 years of alignment, of authenticity, of no longer hiding. There have been hardships, yes. Doors that closed, people who walked away, battles I didn't anticipate. But never once have I longed for the safety of the closet where that emerald skirt once hung, hidden away from the world. Tonight, I am grateful. For torn fabric, for mechanical failures, for kind strangers, for second chances. Most of all, for the courage to keep walking forward, even when the path leads somewhere I never expected to go. Lorelei closed the journal and placed it on her nightstand. Tomorrow she would wake up as she had for 10 years now, as herself, completely and without apology. The emerald skirt had been torn beyond repair, but what it had revealed could never be damaged. She drifted to sleep with her auburn hair spread across the pillow, at peace with her past, present, and the future still unfolding before her. The escalator had stopped, but Lorelei's journey continued, one authentic step after another into the life she was always meant to live.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!